Hi, I'm Ernest Ward, and this is Strathmore Artist Paper's Back to Basics workshop. Before we get started with our drawing today, let's take a moment to talk about supplies. First on our list will be graphite pencils. And these come in a variety of different sizes and grades of softness. So what you use is entirely up to you. I'm going to be using some of the larger sketching pencils. These come with a thick lead, and it's soft, so it gives you a nice gradation. There are also graded pencils. These come in a variety of hardnesses or softnesses from 9H at the hardest level. These will do a very fine light line to 9B at the softest end of the range. Another thing that can be very, very useful for you are pencil extenders. They have a little slip ring on it. You slip the pencil in, lock it in place, and then you're good to go. Next item on our list that will be very useful for you is a white vinyl eraser. Like this one, they come in a variety of brands. It's entirely up to you as to which one you use. They all work equally well. These work much better than the old red erasers on the end of a pencil. If you use the number 2 school pencil, those yellow ones that we grew up with and everything, that's absolutely fine. The number 2 pencil is the equivalent of an HB and work perfectly fine for our purposes, but I recommend that you do not use the erasers on the end because they're too harsh and they tend to tear up your paper. Instead, use the white vinyl erasers. Third item on our list today is the paper that we're going to be working on, and I recommend that you choose either the Strathmore sketch paper or the Strathmore drawing paper. The Strathmore drawing paper has a slightly higher weight, heavier weight to it, a slightly toothier surface to it, and is an off or cream white, an ivory white. The sketch paper, as you'll notice from the comparison here, is a snowier or whiter, a pure white. For today's drawing, I'm going to be using the sketch paper, the lighter weight and smoother surface. The ivory paper, the Strathmore drawing paper, I'm going to actually be using in the first bonus reel, bonus video that I shoot, and I'll be doing at the Fort Worth Botanical Garden a little bit later. The next item on our supply list is actually optional, and that is a drawing board. The drawing board is intended to support your paper during the drawing process, makes it a little bit easier to handle the paper one-handed while your other hand is free to do the drawing. The next item that I recommend is an alligator clip. These become particularly useful if you're shooting outdoors on a windy day. Take a business card of some sort, something that's a little bit cardstock-like, and put it over your drawing surface, and then put the alligator clip on. Alligator clip can be put on the top or the bottom of the paper. It can also be moved during the drawing process so that it's out of the way. This will prevent the wind from grabbing your sheet of paper and flipping it over or causing it to be damaged or soiled. The next item on our list of supplies is also optional, and that is a soft bristled brush. This one's a particularly large one. A small one, a 1-inch or 2-inch paintbrush will do fine as long as it's clean and soft. Its sole purpose in our drawing is actually to clean up the drawing. If we get debris on the drawing, or if we've done an erasing and we have the little rubber noodles that come off of the eraser, we can brush those off without using our hand and without putting any hand oil or anything like that onto the drawing. One very useful tool that you can use in composing your subject is a composing frame. These can either be store-bought like this one, or you can make them yourself out of cardstock. First, start off by adjusting the frame to give you the format shape that you want. In this case, I'm wanting a rectangle. And then you simply move it up in front of your eye until you see your subject, either complete or the cropped portion that you want to depict, through the frame. You can move it side to side so that you can compose your subject on the left or the right hand side or in the center of your format, and then you can repeat what you see onto your paper. For this workshop, I've set up a simple workspace in one corner of my studio consisting of a dedicated work table that's adequate for all of the subjects that we'll be using, my drawing board and paper, and my pencils and other drawing tools. It's also directly adjacent to a window that gives me natural light with controllability through the blinds, and an artificial light so that I can continue working on overcast days or in the evening. One very effective way to learn is to begin with the things that you already know and to build on that foundation. For this lesson, we're going to begin with materials that you are already familiar with, even if you have no prior drawing experiences. White sheets of paper and simple graphite pencils. The pencil, because of its nature, is a linear tool. That is, that the easiest type of mark that it makes is a line. And in fact, for our purposes, a line is simply the movement of a pencil across a sheet of paper. Lines can be either explicit, shown, or implied, as in a dotted or broken line. Lines can be bold, or they can be very faint. Bold lines will tend to jump out at the viewer, catch the viewer's attention, whereas faint lines will tend to pull back into the background. Lines can go from thin to thick and back to thin again. Lines can be straight, or they can be curved. They can be zigzag. And as we said before, they can be broken, or any combination thereof. In lesson 1, we're going to be using line to convey shape. Shape is the contour or outline of an area, object, or figure. The human brain is such that it processes the shape of these things before it processes their form, color, or texture. Line is, for the human brain, the most efficient way of conveying or representing shape. And as with line, shape may be expressed or implied. As with line, shape can be either explicit or implied. In choosing a subject for today's lesson, use your own discretion. Choose something that is simple enough that it's not going to frustrate you, but also something that's visually interesting for you. In this case, I've chosen an onion that my daughter was growing in our pantry. There are 3 methods commonly used in measuring your subject and your drawing. First one is the traditional single pencil method. Here we're measuring the width of our onion, and then using that, going vertically, we measure and determine how many of those units there are. There's 1, 2, 3, and a half. An alternate method is to use a ruler in your free hand, do the same measurements, and then convey those to your paper. The third method is to use 2 pencils, as I'm using here. Adjust the distance between the 2 pencils to determine the width of the onion, and then convert that, or turn that vertically to measure the height. This too can then be conveyed to the paper. Today we're going to use sight sizing in our drawing. In sight sizing, you draw the object the actual size that you see it from your particular vantage point. So I'm going to measure the height using the ruler and then add that to the paper. I'm going to measure the width at arm's length, and I'm also going to add that to my drawing. That way, all measurements will be the exact same, both at arm's length and on the paper itself. The first marks that I put onto the paper are going to be determining the outer limits of the drawing. Since I want to include the entire onion, I want to find the point farthest to the bottom, farthest to the left, and farthest to the top. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to measure the overall proportion. As a unit, I'm going to take the width of my onion, mark that down. I'm actually taking the width that I've measured at arm's length and conveying that on my paper. I'm then going to take that measurement and see how many of those there are in the height. And it comes out to about 3.5. So I take my width, go vertically, 1, 2, 3.5, and I'm actually going to come down just a little bit. The next thing is roughing in the general shape. The key here is to look for the broadest shapes and to make your marks at this stage dark enough that you can see them, but light enough that you can correct them or even erase them as necessary. This early stage is referred to as the gesture. At this stage, one way of avoiding excessive pressure on your pencil is to hold it farther back. If you hold it at the end of the pencil, the same amount of pressure will produce a much lighter mark than if you hold it near the tip where we normally hold a pencil when we're writing. As we spend more time looking at our subject, we'll become more familiar with its details, and our observations will become more accurate. We gradually make corrections. At this stage, if all is going well, you may find yourself entering a state where you're acutely aware of all of the relationships of your subject, the parts to one another, scale, size, and so forth. And the drawing will progress very rapidly. If you become distracted or lose your focus, don't hesitate to stop and resume making measurements and cross-references until your focus returns. As you near the end of your drawing, expect to slow down. Most of the drawing is complete. Most of the information is already on the paper. So give yourself more time to find those things that still need to be put into the drawing. Line variety can add visual interest to your drawing while adding additional detail. So experiment and explore the possibilities of varied pressure on your pencil. A little cleanup, and we're done. Well, that about wraps up Lesson 1. I hope you've enjoyed our time together as much as I have, and that you'll join me again next week for Lesson 2 of Back to Basics.